Here we are again, one more time around. Today's podcast guest, a lot of times I start out with something I'm calling divulgence or something to that effect. Honestly, it's been a minute since we recorded one. But I have to divulge what I have to divulge. Mark Michael Adams is here with me today. And you are one of the first people I met when I returned from New York. And I came back to the Seacoast when I decided to get back into music. It was 2004. And I moved to Portsmouth. And because that's where all of the musicians were, that's where all the artists were, I came down to the Seacoast for college and left. And when some friends decided to talk me into coming back rather than going elsewhere, I said, all right, if I'm going back to New Hampshire, it's going to be to the Seacoast. There was a place that took me in unofficially. They took me in by not pushing me away, I suppose. It was more a living room. It was a welcoming space. It was a place where it wasn't on the nose curated. It wasn't by definition curated, but it was looked over by a titan of the realm. And few people exactly knew the lengths that that titan of the realm guarded over the space. But the prevailing figure there was this gentleman, Mark Michael Adams. And you were behind the bar, and you were in front of the bar, and you were beside the bar, and you were at the door, and you were a figure that moved through the place. I wouldn't say you floated around, but you did sort of, your presence moved about. And because you are who you are, and you put off the vibe that you put off, and because you're smart enough to see people coming from a mile away, you were able to keep this space really incredibly tight. And I've always admired that. And I consider you one of my favorite intellectuals. Your mind is wide open. You are always willing to reconsider what belief you have, and that means that you don't make your ideas a part of your identity or a part of you. And I think that's crucial. I think that's crucial because a lot of people feel they've gotten dug in with their ideas and they can't move off of them. Otherwise, it somehow affects their character, who they are portraying themselves to be. And I think in doing that, they give themselves away as not being intellectuals, but being rather rigid and stubborn under the guise of being open-minded.
Yeah.
You're someone who definitely comes with that label, a great deal of authenticity, and I appreciate you for it.
Thank you. It's funny how you can realize things in the moment, right? An epiphany of the world. And you're not the first person to say that I am strong in my opinions, but open-minded in heart and I'm willing to listen and to learn and grow and to change what I think. And I think just now I am realizing that that is because as a kid, those people that were supposed to be my teacher, my guide, my mentor, basically my parents, my grandparents, I learned rather that I could not learn from them, that the things they tried to teach me were not valid. One of the hardest things I've ever done, and one of my first storytelling performances ever with True Tales Live, was about me walking away from the Christian faith. So I was, as a kid, we were first Jehovah's Witness. We were disfellowshipped because my mom got divorced because my father was not a safe person. And I started attending a Baptist church with my grandparents. And I took it seriously. You know, I got the message that when you were talking about my eternal soul, and I became a born-again Christian. I accepted Christ as my personal Savior, the whole 9 yards, man, hook, line, and sinker. But then I really started thinking about certain biblical stories. One in particular is the story of Abraham and Isaac, and that's the story that is the foundation of monotheism. And I looked at my grandfather and I thought, if God asked you to kill me, would you do it? Would the angel show up in time to stop him? You know, and it rattled my cage, fierce. And in this one sermon where the minister was speaking on the story of Noah's Ark and the flood, he said that this was the first time it ever rained on the earth. And I'm 12 years old. I was like, wait, he didn't just say that it was the first time that it ever rained on
Surely
the
he
earth.
can't mean that, right?
Right.
He's got to mean something else.
So I went to raise my hand to ask a question in the middle of service. And my grandmother batted my hand down. I was like, what? She said, don't you do that. Okay. And I was incredibly confused because like, I'm here to learn.
Yeah.
I'm here to learn about this faith. Evidently my soul's riding on the line here. I want to get a straight answer.
Taking it seriously.
And I was told I couldn't ask questions. So then I really started listening.
That's not education.
So immediately I began to doubt. What, the first time it ever rained on the earth? Nah, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
And it was only a few weeks later that, after reviewing multiple different foundational stories of the faith, that I decided that I don't believe what they're teaching. And I stopped going, I renounced the faith, blah, 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 blah. But it was that moment where I realized, first and foremost, this minister, Pastor Whipple, was on stage. I'm like, I can't trust this man to teach me.
Sorry to interrupt. That's a name that needs to make it into a story.
Yeah, it should. It should eventually. And then I look at my grandparents. My grandfather was a World War II vet, staff sergeant, artillery brigade, European theater. The man literally fought Nazis. I looked at him and I'm like, I can see through this bullshit. Why can't you?
Yeah.
Right? So then I was like, well, I can't rely upon you to learn anything meaningful. And then when it came to public education, stuff like that, I remember being a freshman in high school, like Algebra 1, and going to my mom and my stepfather, saying, hey, I need help with my homework. They were clueless. Couldn't help me at all. And I was like, well, then evidently, like, either you're an idiot or this is not actually relevant to real life.
Yeah.
Right?
Or their life.
Or their life. But, and that it was just one thing after another. And I had a really hard time as a kid dealing with the popular mythology of our culture, like Santa Claus.
So you had
all that.
a good real early education in, you gave yourself good early education in not being married to your ideas, because they
Question
change.
everything.
So you're positive about something until you learn that one other thing. And then when you learn that one other thing, you've got to reanalyze everything that you think you knew.
Yeah.
So they're just, I think ideas are kind of tools in a puzzle.
Yeah.
And that puzzle can fit with stuff. And if it's not fitting, maybe it's not completely right, and maybe you can set it down, or maybe you realize this is an incorrect puzzle piece. It has not, it doesn't go with this puzzle at all.
Yeah.
And it's going to serve me nothing, so you get rid of it. And then you try and find what might construct, because I think that's what we do with words, is we have ideas inside of our heads, or wherever we get our ideas from. We play with ideas, and what works we use, and what doesn't we set down, or hopefully we discard. I think we have a greater problem with people walking around keeping things they think they're going to use later. Some ideas that should have been shed or gotten rid of. I think you met a few of those along the way.
Yeah. Like.
But something that I found tremendously helpful in moving back from, again, I was in New York City. I was in the melting pot. It was right after 9/11 that I moved down there. And I mean, still cleaning up debris in our apartment every single day, sweeping and vacuuming 3 times because it was settling out of the air like it was still fresh. Surrounded by a lot of different angles of humanity and perception. And when I moved back to New Hampshire, one of the reasons I wanted to be on the Seacoast was because There's a lot greater diversity in idea around here. I hear very similar stuff further in. I love all of New Hampshire, but when I move inland a little bit, it gets a little bit tribal. Towards the seacoast, you get wild ideas from all different directions. I don't believe all of them, but what I loved about the coat of arms is that the best hearts in the area with the craziest ideas, some of them just normal ideas, just normal people looking to have a pint, but you could find the most interesting characters, and that's what I'm always after. It's what this podcast is about, is sitting down with interesting people. And you were kind of the ringleader of the interesting, because you would have conversation no matter whose table you were standing at. And it was like switching a TV. You'd be standing at a table with 6 people, all who had varying ideas and thoughts, but maybe thematic just a little bit. And then you couldn't get 10 feet without the next table almost feeling shorted that you stood and talked, but you're not going to stand and talk with us. So you would kind of, as much as you could, make your rounds, but you would switch from one channel to a completely different programming, and you would assimilate just immediately, and they'd feel comfortable and warm and welcomed and challenged and invigorated. And I'd watch people as you meandered through, and they would all kind of be like, I got to breathe for a second.
It was, it's funny how trying to be efficient at your job leads to being better at your job in some ways than you ever imagined. Because like in those situations, like if I was on the bar and it's a slower day, but there's a few people, and it was a big bar, so there'd be, people spread throughout. I'd have, a regular over here, one in the middle, one at the end, right? And I'm making drinks, I'm running food, I'm trying to engage in conversation.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, like I'm trying to maintain a conversation with this person, but I can't quite devote as much as my time and energy as I want to this person. But I realize that this person has something in common with this person over here because I know this person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, Sean, do you know Nate? Sean, Nate, Sean, right?
Met a lot of good friends that way.
Yeah. Here's this. I'll be right back. I got to run to the kitchen, and off I'd go.
Keep them occupied.
And then
using
now
each
you
other.
guys are talking.
Yeah.
Now I know that you got your food and your drink. You've got connection to someone, because that's why people would come. It wasn't just food and drink. It was connection with other people.
Yeah.
That's why people come to the pub. And if I didn't have the time or the energy to connect with you, I would do my best to find somebody else in the room that you could connect with.
Yeah. Yeah. You did it well.
Yeah.
There were a lot of good stories there. I remember a lot of community that would overlap kind of simultaneously.
Yeah.
Everybody wasn't a part of one or the other community. It was that New York. It was a melting pot.
Yep.
It was so many different backgrounds and beliefs and ideas and ideals. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start off by saying I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
It was a great spot that you helped to foster and create. And I know that there are people out there that are watching this that are saying, yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Cheers.
And last call.
Here they are. Without these folks, taking Seacoast Entertainer to the next levels wouldn't be happening. Not to this scale. Tangram 3DS actively supports our music and arts scene and has proudly been part of it for the last 20 years. Their creative pros bring vision to life with everything from 3D renderings and VR to video, animation, web design, and branding. As a team of artists living and working on the Seacoast, Tangram considers a thriving local culture essential to us all for the connections we make, communities we build, and creativity we foster. Visit tangram3ds.com to learn more, see their work, and imagine what they can do for you.
It's funny because I was there for so long. I worked there for 17 years. No building has been a part of my life more than that one building. Often, because of my work schedule, doing the door on the weekends and bartending, being manager on duty during the week, people either thought I was the owner or just the bouncer, which was funny. And when the smoking ban happened in the state of New Hampshire, when smoking was made illegal in all public spaces, the newspaper, this Portsmouth Herald, came in to do a quick interview with me because we were one of the few places that was still a smoking establishment. And the funny thing about this issue is that businesses on their own, if they realized that they sold more food than alcohol, they went non-smoking. Over 70% of the businesses in the state of New Hampshire, when it came to food and drink, were already non-smoking. Uh, it was places like mostly it was like the VFW, the American Legion, and some bars. Now, Coat of Arms, we made great food and we sold a lot of food.
I ate a lot of food.
But as more and more places chose to go non-smoking, that sort of self-regulated itself, and people who were smokers came to us, and customers who were definitely non-smoking went elsewhere. So over time, there was a slow shift, and at the time too, that's a big reason too why you would see like a lot of the same faces wherever you went in the pub, because it was at that time a smoking or non-smoking issue. But when the newspaper came in to just get a statement about the ban going through. What was I going to say about this? Hold on. Oh, bollocks. I had a point I was going to make. Lost it.
If I remember right, you were saying they came in because they wanted to talk to you about why the Coat was still a smoking establishment or something of that
Yeah.
nature.
Well, we were one of the last ones.
I'd imagine they're looking for a clickbaity kind of headline.
Yeah. Well, I kind of jokingly promoted the last legal day as the Great American Smoke In. 'Cause the American Heart Association would promote the Great American
Yeah.
Smoke Out, and it was
Yeah,
one
yeah.
day a year when they encouraged everybody to quit smoking tobacco. So I kind of made it a point to tell everybody that was a customer there that, hey, on this day, this is the last day you can smoke. And the place was packed, but what was funny is that we really weren't that busy. People were eating and drinking, but they really were just sitting there ripping cigarettes all night long.
I was sitting there drinking Celtic Warriors, smoking Nat Shermans. It was a long night. Yeah, I
Yeah.
considered the place my living room. I was
Yeah.
there at least 4 nights a week. At the time, I wasn't regularly gigging or
Yeah.
playing with a bunch of bands. I was working at Daddy's,
Yeah.
Junkie Music,
Mm-hmm.
and then doing a lot of painting.
Yeah.
But the bulk of what I was doing was, oh my God, darts and
Pints.
darts.
I think the pub really did define the concept of third place. And when you have where you live, where you work, and your third place,
Yeah.
your place of community. I think the Coat of Arms was absolutely a third place for many, many people. It was awesome there.
I worshipped at that altar for many a time. Yeah, that was my third place.
Uh-huh.
Not to keep everything in the past.
Yeah.
You are a heck of a lot more than simply Mark at the Coat.
You know what's funny is that when I left the Coat, it was a bit of an existential crisis because so many people knew me
Sure.
as Mark.
Literally
from
tens
the
of
Coat.
thousands.
Yeah. That it was hard because I had to redefine myself. When I worked there, and when you work anywhere, when you're dealing with the public in large numbers, when you run into those people who are your customers out and about, you're at the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
You have to be, I hate to say that I was being disingenuous. There are definitely a few times where I was. But I felt that I had to always act excited to see the person, curious as to how they were. I always took the time, and it was because these were people of my community, and I did give a damn. I did care.
Sure.
But there's always that thing in the back of your head where I need people coming in that building to spend their money and tip me because this is how I survive.
It's no different than celebrity.
Yeah.
Local celebrity is still celebrity.
So it was really hard after leaving the pub and going out and seeing people and realizing like, wow, I don't have to make small talk with anyone if I don't want to.
Yeah.
Right? I can come and go as I please. And conversation working was easy because I always had the excuse that I had to walk away because there are other people in the room.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I got to go get food from the kitchen, right?
Yeah,
Something, got to go run those drinks. I can hold this conversation for as long as I want.
got to get back on
And
it.
then if I start feeling like I want to walk away, I can just walk away.
Right. I saw you do that a couple times too.
Not being at the pub, it's hard. Like I went to a friend's birthday party and I hadn't seen them in a long time, and there's quite a few people there. And there were people that I knew, and there were people that knew who I was that I didn't remember. I couldn't recall them, and there were a bunch of absolute strangers. And I showed up, and I wasn't in a good mindset, and I said hi to a bunch of people and saw the host and said happy birthday to her, blah blah blah. They had a deck, and there's like a big layout of food. So she was like, go get a bite to eat. So I went up on the deck and I started looking at the buffet, and I was like, we need more napkins. Where's the forks?
Automatic.
There's a couple dirty plates. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not working. I'm not working. And it was hard. It was really hard. Going to social gatherings just as a friend, it's hard sometimes for me because I'm so used to being, still to this day, it's better now.
Yeah.
It's better now.
Good.
But sometimes it's really hard because I don't have a purpose other than just being there. I don't have a job. I don't have a role. My role is just being me.
Be you. Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard being. Harder than I thought.
Yeah.
So
You're doing all right.
Doing okay.
You're doing all right.
Doing okay. It's been a fucking crazy couple years though. Right, world? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. So we did a lot of live music at the pub. And so Thursday nights was live music.
I played there one time.
That's the question I was going to ask. So I would focus on local original music.
Love it.
I didn't care what you played.
My favorite kind.
If I got your demo and I thought you were halfway decent, I'd give you a shot. Most of the time it worked out well. Sometimes, somehow, the demo was a lot better than what the band actually was.
It happens. You
But
can
it
do a
happens.
whole bunch of takes,
Yeah.
get the demo just right, and
Just
send
right.
it out.
Yeah. But tell me about under what name, under what guise did you play at the pub?
I played there with a band that I was in. So I've always tried to have a band going that is a little bit more pop friendly, something that people can dance and drink and have fun
Yeah.
to, and a band that's just my art project.
Mm-hmm.
I have a propensity towards digging through the creative realm and trying to find unknown patterns. And if, like with Cursed on Earth now, the one that I primarily play with, if something sounds like something that's vaguely familiar, we immediately scrap it. If it's unoriginal, if it doesn't lead you somewhere that hasn't been, that nobody has been, we don't stick to it. The band that I played there with was a band that was more on the pop side. It was called Division Tree.
Okay.
Some talented players. We all met at the open mic at the Chit Chat Lounge, where I was the house drummer.
That's
Haverhill. Yeah, Bob Beal was running it.
Yep.
And he is, my God, what a virtue. I'd love to have him on here. Guitar virtuoso.
Oh, Bob's amazing.
He's incredible.
Love Bob.
Really, really great guy.
Is Chit Chat still open?
No, it closed years ago. There was a new owner. They made a really good, solid push at it. They did some cool things. They opened the upstairs.
Yeah.
I threw a freak out there. 5 bands, a bunch of different artists, some painters, and
Nice.
sold 280 something tickets. It was the Great Ice Storm of 2011, and 262 of the tickets actually braved the ice storm to come out to this thing, and it was the biggest, craziest party I've ever thrown. It was incredible.
That's awesome.
But Division Tree was at that. We played that, and I always admired what Bob had done, which was with his band The Screen, they would have an album release north, an album release west, and an album release south.
Yeah.
And they would play, the Barley Pub. They would play Stone Church, and they would play Chit Chat Lounge.
Yeah.
from time to time they'd play in Portsmouth, but I liked the idea of
Yeah.
having your feet in multiple scenes.
Yeah.
So that was a band that I was playing with primarily in Mass. We played a lot in Boston and Somerville and surrounding areas down there, a lot in Haverhill.
Yeah.
But I wanted to play at the Coat because it's my living room, and I
Yeah.
thought it would be fun to set my kid up in my living room
Yeah.
and play a show and be like, hey guys, nobody here realizes I play music because I do it out there.
Yeah.
Look what I can do.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. I didn't end up continuing with that band.
Yeah.
But I think part of it was I had soured on the experience of dealing with booking people and promoters and club owners. And I took a couple of years away after Division Tree. And it really took wanting to just be my own independent thing to get back into playing out.
Yeah.
And I came back with the intention of not playing the old model. And if I'm playing a show and I'm going to invite people out, it's going to be because I have something to show you.
Yeah.
I have something really interesting that I've been working on, and I think you're going to enjoy this. Not, well, we just saw this show. It's going to be something different. It's going to be something, enticing. There's something else to do. I don't want people to get bored.
Yeah.
I was significantly bored and just entertaining myself mostly in Division Tree. And then one of the guitar players left because he snapped and he was like, can you just play a simple rock beat? It's like, no, I mean, I could.
Yeah.
I don't want to. That's
Yeah.
like, I'd want to slit my wrists if I were doing
Yeah.
that. The lead singer threw him out. He was like, you're just out of the band. Get out of here. Don't ever talk to him like that. He's better at his instrument than you are at yours by
Yeah.
millennia. Like, don't.
Yeah.
So he got tossed, and we kept doing the thing as a trio for a little while, but it was just
Yeah.
uninspired.
It ran its course.
It was uninspired. I mean, I did what I could with what was there, but it would, I think my reliance was more on the creative endeavor than just making stuff that we're hoping people are going to enjoy. It's not a problem in Cursed. We make what we like. If people like it, cool. If they don't, okay.
I was talking with a friend of mine the other day who was part of that whole community back in the day at the pub. He's a local musician, has been in a bunch of different local bands. And the original material that he and the guys that he was playing with at the time back in the day is some of the most important music in my life, right?
Can I ask the name?
I'm going to keep it on the DL. Like, this is just a story because it's more about the scene than the individual. But he was talking about how, I mean, he's been very busy this summer with gigs. He has a daytime job, but all of his gigs are cover bands, right? So he's been part of the local music scene for 30 years. And unfortunately, like, the way the scene is now, it's really hard to get paid to perform original music. But people will pay to have you play songs that they've been hearing on the radio their whole damn lives.
Yes.
And it's so incredibly frustrating how, like, people love music, but getting people to come out and pay a minimal cover charge. It's like, it's the cost of one drink. Just fork it over.
So
right?
here's the interesting thing
So
about
frustrating.
that. It is. And coming from a person who doesn't play covers, God, I can't even say that. I got paid minimally to play covers with a group, North River, a couple summers ago.
Yeah.
And thought it would be fun, just get out there and play. And it was fun, but there's no money in it.
Yeah.
There's so little money in it that you start having realizations. Like, it's that little money in it. And the money hasn't increased over the last 50 years. It's the same money.
Yeah.
Except it's worth a tenth of what it was at best. Maybe less.
Yeah.
So what I realized is if you're going to make the effort to play music, you have to make music that is serving yourself. You need to have money coming in on the outside
Yeah.
that supports you and your life while you give your passion to your music. Everything on the outside supports your ability to do that. If you remove that, what you're making isn't, if you're successful, unless you're lightning in a bottle, when you remove that, you're making a product because you're making something that you need to know is you're counting on this to bring in money.
Yeah.
The way that you bring in money is by getting people to feel an emotional connection to your music or a time during which they were listening to your music. Like Lauryn Hill always says, Lauren Michaels, sorry, not Lauryn Hill. She's awesome too, but Lauren Michaels, Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
He says that everyone's favorite time period of SNL is when they were in high school. It's those 4 years. They always look back and it's when they're like, oh man, it was them. And it was the last time that they knew real freedom. It's the last time that they had no responsibilities outside of get up in the morning, take your book bag, and make it to your daily babysitters. And people basically look back like that. They kind of do the same thing with music. So when I go out, one band I played with, we had a sign that we put next to the stage, and it had all of the songs listed out that we knew we were going to get asked for with a price to play it. And like Mustang Sally was on there. If you want to hear that, it's $75. You know, Wonderwall was on there. That's a $50 song. So when people would ask these, Stairway to Heaven, $150.
Yeah.
When people ask for these songs, we would basically just point to the sign. It was frustrating at first until I remembered these people are looking to me to give them a feeling because they trust me. It's a compliment.
Yeah.
It is. It's frustrating
Yeah.
because, God damn it, I don't want to play any of those songs again. But at the same time, you realize if you're going to be making original music, you need to make, and that if you want to make money doing it, you need to make music that doesn't necessarily strike a chord with somebody and make them think this is the most amazing thing ever. You might just be making music during a time that they are imprinting. They're going to later feel nostalgic about. Your music makes them feel a certain thing, so they go back and they listen to it. But that's like all the different types of music fans.
Yeah.
You know, some of them are everybody's looking for something else in art, I guess. But when those people come back to something, or they feel like they need to listen to that thing again, most of the time it's an emotional response, and they're going to something that was there for them when they were when they realized that they were fulfilled by something, so they reach back out to that.
Yeah.
Most people have the radio on, used to anyway. Most people used to either have the radio on or they were around music while it was playing, not being played for them. Go far enough back and you run into that. There was a piano in every house for that reason.
Yeah.
But when someone's listening to music at the pub, they're most likely hearing a wide variety. But there's always going to be a thing that just gets through to them, and they just need to hear Steve Perry belt out some Journey real quick, because it makes you feel that certain way. If you're a local artist and you can't necessarily do what he does, you can do your closest facsimile. You can do your best.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing something that's going to inspire them, you look like you're just doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then you're duplicating. And that's uninspiring. So there's a balancing act that you have to do as a local musician. But my advice to all local musicians out there, have a day job, get really, really good at it so that you have time to make music. And you can tell your boss, if you have one, if you're unfortunate enough to have a daily boss, you can make sure they know music matters to me, and when I leave here, I need to leave here. I have other stuff to do. I have this whole other life that I'm living. That's what I've found is the best approach. you don't have to let money interfere with your creative process.
Yeah.
You don't have to put a timeline on your creative process. If a song is not getting through, if you're still trying to wrangle it, you don't have to force it. If you have to force a song through the finish line, you're not doing it justice. I mean, as an artist, as a creator, you should be working on it until you feel just completely uninspired by it and push it aside.
But here, so let me ask you this. I've got something else popped in my head, but so for me as a writer,
Yeah.
right, when it comes to doing, beat poetry or spoken word or short stories,
Sure.
in my head and in my reality, it is almost never finished. There are
That's
a
hard.
few pieces that I have that are definitely done.
Yeah.
But it seems like every time I go through and reread any of my work, I am,
Trying to punch it up.
like adjust the punctuation
this.
somewhere, swap out a word or two.
Yeah.
Like nothing is ever a final draft.
You're a tinkerer
always
as an artist.
always tinkering with
Yeah,
it.
and that's the big question that I come across
Yeah.
when I talk to a lot of artists
Yeah.
is at what point, and I was on a podcast called the Muse Podcast
Yeah.
with Kirsten. It was a lot of fun. Duncan Watt and John Briggs were on that one.
Nice.
Duncan Watt asks this incredible question: at what point are you, as an artist, willing to let your art live? And when you release it, it's no longer yours.
Yeah.
It's everyone else's, and they interpret it their own way. It
Yeah.
becomes a part of them, and they tell you what it is.
Mm-hmm.
At what point do you let it sail?
Yeah.
I'm one who thinks if you don't consider it done and you haven't released it, there's a reason.
Yeah.
Let it sit.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also someone who thinks do the work.
Yeah.
And even if it's not coming, when I write, a lot of times I'm writing from the standpoint of I'm going to catch something, and I'll write 15 paragraphs
Mm-hmm.
and only get the side of an idea.
Yeah.
But when I get that side of an idea and I throw away those 15 paragraphs, I explore that side of the idea, and that may turn into 2 paragraphs that I'm using.
Yep. I'm the same way.
I didn't get those without doing those 15, but those 15 had nothing to do with it. So
When
do
it-
the work and you'll end up with the thing you were looking for.
I'm always telling people when it comes to writing that you just have to put pen to paper. You got to do it. Just emotionally vomit onto the paper. Do it. Just write. And then when you're done, you set it aside and then look at it again the next day. Most likely, most of the stuff you put down the page is going to be garbage. But you'll find one stanza. There'll be one paragraph in there that is well said. It touches upon the emotions you wanted, and it's good. So you just extract that, toss away the rest, and then you build from there.
Yeah.
You do it all the time.
Yeah.
Go through old notebooks and just scratch out that's crap, that's crap, that's crap. Oh wait, those 2 lines right
Little
there.
nuggets.
Those are good. I can use that. The other thing I wanted to bring up is this hit me the other day when it comes to technology and how much technology has changed society, how much it's changed our culture, how we connect with each other, how we have access to information. And what popped in my head was so because the government and the FCC made it so television had to abandon broadcasting, everything is digital now. Local radio is now the only thing that is broadcast per se. So if we lose our satellite system and we lose the internet,
God save Elon Musk.
fuck Elon Musk. All right. It's an emergency, right? And the only thing, the internet is down. And it happens to us all the time. I'm at work and all of a sudden, the website that dictates how I do business crashes because of the industry I'm in. It's connected to a lot of different things. And if the website's not working, I can't do anything. You work in a restaurant, you got a POS system, your POS system crashes, everything comes to a grinding halt. Good luck going back to what we used to do 30 years ago, right? And being able to switch over efficiently. You're screwed for the day. You might as well just close, right? But if a national emergency happens and all of a sudden we don't have internet and your only way to get information is radio, how many people actually have a radio?
A radio.
Other than in your car.
Or somebody who has a plate in their head.
Yeah. Right?
And braces.
Because our phones, like, we can digitally stream radio.
Yeah.
But there's not a radio receiver in our phone. Right?
It's true.
So think about it. It's like, how do you get radio signal?
You can't keep knocking on those preppers, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Hey, I still have a little boom box that I use in the basement. So
Yeah.
when I'm building Lego, I can pop in CDs and it's got radio.
I mean, you're asking, and I know you're talking to not an ordinary person. I have several radios.
Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah. I have a number of, I also know how to make a radio. So if I needed to, I can make
Yeah.
something that I can at least receive.
Yeah.
Transmitting might be a different thing.
I'm
you
going
might
to
have
break the
find
fourth wall
somebody.
right now.
Go ahead.
Right? So we're going to go behind the scenes. Hey, Nevin.
Oh, you can always talk to Nevin. I've referenced Nevin plenty of times.
In your
Producer.
home, how many radios do you have? Not in the car, in your house. How many radios do you have? 4. There we go.
4, same.
All right, everybody out there, look around your house and ask, how many radios do I have? If you don't have at least one, just go to the department store and get a little cheap boom box with a radio in it. You might need it one day.
You might need it one day soon if the CIA keeps trying to knock off Donald Trump.
The CIA is not trying to knock off Donald Trump.
Well, let me ask you this. Why is it that both people who have shot at him or tried to were in BlackRock videos? Go full tinfoil hat.
Okay. Where's the waitress? I need a drink. Okay.
Hi everyone, Sean with Seacoast Entertainer. I hope you're already enjoying one of the greatest communities in the world and in the homes of that community on social media, like Seacoast Music Scene groups of New Hampshire, Maine, and Massachusetts, and the fastest growing new group, Lakes Region Music Scene, all on Facebook, and at Seacoast Entertainer on IG, as well as Seacoast_Tainer on X. That's in addition to the shows we've been hosting or sponsoring around the region, like Jam of Legends, Writers in the Round, and these podcasts you're listening to now. And this is only the beginning. We're growing, and it takes a lot of work behind the scenes. As anyone who has built a business or organization will tell you, it is effort. When it's entirely volunteer driven, it is devotion. Devotion, though, doesn't pay the bills. And building a world-class website comes with bills. Fortunately, we have a community leader who has stepped up to help as an in-kind sponsor to cover the vast development costs. We could use more. A website as robust and feature-rich as the one they're building us has a lot of services backing it up in order to give you the experience in following the arts you didn't realize you were missing. We'll need to cover the costs of these services. Things like a stream of content from your favorite local artists from the popular social sites, fed to one central location outside the confines of those services, and a calendar populated with schedules of upcoming events across the region. Certainly, not least, is real journalism will make a return to the Seacoast under the leadership of our editor-in-chief, Christopher Hislop. With this comes all of our favorite pieces like 5 Spot and Spotlight. One of my favorite undertakings in all of this is the Musicians Archive, a constantly expanding archive of the musicians and bands who have come before and those who are just getting their stage legs. We all know that we're standing on the shoulders of giants here, so we'll pay tribute to as many as we can identify. From the ultra-popular like Say Zuzu, Thanks to Gravity, The Press Project, and Fly Spinach Fly, to wildly impactful artists whose names you've never heard. When you hear me reading ad copy for businesses, know this: they're paying actual money to support our amazing way of life, engaging with this gift to humanity, the arts.
I don't know anything about what transpired in the last 48 hours. I have seen a headline. Evidently, there was a second attempt.
I've soaked up everything
On
that I
his
possibly
life?
can, just like every other time there's a
Okay.
major thing. You got to look at everything and sort through it.
As far as the first attempt goes, this is how I see it. That this was an individual who was mentally ill to the point where they were committing suicide by cop. This is a thing where people, they don't
I'm
have,
familiar with
they
it.
can't point it at themselves, but they're going to lash out and do something and do what they think is something meaningful about their life.
Sure.
But they know they're going to die. So that's what this person was going to do. This person was already tracking not just Trump, but Biden and Harris and multiple other high-level politicians just paying attention to what their live events were, and just whoever was the biggest and the closest and the soonest, he was going to go for.
You think?
And he used just a little camera drone, knew the location, got a quick survey, was okay from the top of that building. I can use that to get a shot at the stage. The building itself was so blatantly obvious that no professional assassin would actually use it. Therefore, the powers that be that are supposed to guard the president, it kind of fell by the wayside. They didn't think to even protect it because it was so obviously stupid of a vantage point, because you're going to die.
It was
You have
in
no.
fact where they stationed all of the local officers.
It happened to be on their roof. And this kid managed to get up there, and he managed to squeeze off a few shots. And unfortunately, someone died in the crowd, and
Several were injured with
several
life-altering injuries.
Yeah. So there's no conspiracy. Like, and I'm definitely like, oh, trust me, I can go on about conspiracies.
So you see it more from the official.
The official line
narrative.
seems to be, yeah, that tracks from what I've seen. But I'm also going on the information given to me by the corporate media.
Correct.
Also, the various sources that I use to fact check and confirm, everything seems to lay out. There was no actual attempt. The way I see it, if someone of actual power wanted him dead, he'd be dead. It would have already happened at this point. So any attempt right now on his life is just some lunatic thinking they can make a difference in the world. And by the way, you're not going to make any difference because we've got Vance. Like, don't, please. Like, whatever. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to change anything.
I think too few people realize how close we came to a civil war on that first one. Whether or not he was sent by the deep state, whether or not, it doesn't matter. If somebody clips a martyr, if somebody clips a figurehead in a country that is a powder keg, I don't think we see the same thing as what happened with the Kennedy assassination.
I'm going to push back on civil war.
Let me finish that.
Okay, finish that. I'm sorry.
I think no matter what, when you have a person who is described to be as he is, and bear in mind, you know this of me, nobody else out there does, because typically I keep away from, I used to be headlong into political discussions. I basically, the closest I come to any kind of political affiliation is small L libertarian with a heavy bent on classical liberal with an understanding rooted in republic. We're a constitutional republic, first and foremost. The Bill of Rights is a document that supersedes all other political documents, and it says we give the government the right to exist first and foremost. It's different than every other country, and my God, does England wish they had that. After that is the Constitution. We operate with democratic principles so that we all sit and discuss, but the fundamentals are as such.
Agreed.
So I don't end in any political party. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. So that aside, I've hated Donald Trump since the early 90s.
Always. He's a
Even
creep
during
and
the
a schmuck.
time when everybody was like, he's so much fun. Look at him on Saturday Night Live. Look at him saying, you're fired. Like all of that stuff. He to me is the king of the used car salesman.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that should take him seriously in a high-level business meeting or a technical meeting or anything else. He's a tremendous salesperson, and I say that having basically a PhD in sales. I see all of his tricks. I know what he's doing. And he's one of the reasons I say if there was a master's degree at any college in the United States in sales and people started taking it, the entire business world would come unraveled because everybody would know when they're being pitched. Everybody would know when they're being feature benefit or trial closed and all of that stuff. He's a great used car salesman. However, tens of millions of people look at him as this country's savior, which means if someone clips him, the response to that is not small, and it's not going to end without any blood. The same can be said of trying to overthrow the state, which is why they went on the rampage that they did about the whole January 6th thing. To me, January 6th was a Disneyland buffoonery of theater, political theater. To say it's an insurrection is ridiculous. What we just watched is a soft coup of the sitting president. We're on the precipice of World War III, and we don't really have a president, and nobody is dissatisfied by that. Nobody's going, what's actually happening? Biden was running, now he's not. So there are statists who will believe in the state no matter what, and they're right now supporting Harris, which is weird because they didn't used to be statists. They used to be just like me, which is Rage Against the Machine. I don't know anybody that was complaining about Thanksgiving before me. I was in, I think, 6th grade, and I stopped celebrating Thanksgiving. Gene Shaheen literally changed the rules in the state so that people like me in 6th grade didn't have to stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance because I refused to do it. So when it comes to being like that, before there was a social justice warrior label, I wasn't celebrating Columbus Day, and I was in fact railing against it.
Same.
So when you get to this place where if you say anything that, I don't want to say defends Trump, but casts him in any other light other than the most severe evil, even when a situation doesn't call for it, it doesn't merit it, it doesn't make any sense, what you end up with is a lack of communication, good communication.
Okay. See your point, but I want to get back to, you use the phrase civil war.
Yes. There is one side and there's another side.
Okay.
The freedom fighters,
Okay.
or who think they're freedom fighters, are
Yes.
following Trump.
Yes.
And the others are begging that we respect the state and would presume they have the military on their side. I don't think they do. And the side that's following him is much heavier armed.
Okay. I think that if someone pulled a trigger and their aim was true, some person acting on their own, thinking that they can make a difference in the world or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. There's no conspiracy. There's no deep state. It's just an individual thinking they can do something.
We'll presume Epstein just hanged himself. Sure. Let's go on that. Let's go with that.
Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. All right? Because we know he didn't hang himself. Anyway, we're going to presuppose that there is no...
The CIA is not meddling.
Yeah, there's no government
The thing
conspiracy.
they get paid billions of dollars to do,
It
they're
literally
not
is
doing.
just the lone wolf assassin
Sure.
thinking they're doing something right.
Let's presume there's nobody conspiring ever anywhere.
The reaction by his followers and by the media. One, it's going to depend upon the media a lot and their initial reaction. Of course, what we saw when it happened the first time, immediately a whole bunch of presuppositions as to who the person could have been or what their reasoning was. So depending upon that initial reaction, that's going to have the domino effect thereafter. Now, will there be violence? Yes. We're going to see violence if it happens, because there are a lot of people out there that own a lot of weapons that will, if you got right down to it, they're itching to use them.
They're itching to defend the republic, is what they're itching to do.
They're itching to lash out. They are angry. They are scared of the world. The most macho sons of bitches. Okay, here is one of the greatest ironies of the world. One of the greatest ironies of the world, of the human race, is in our lizard brain, we instinctually are cautious and fearful of things that do not look like us, right?
So you acknowledge the lizard people exist.
That's different. I'm talking about, and I support the mole people.
Sure.
Okay, fuck the lizard people.
No, I'm with the mole people too.
Okay, yeah, mole people all the way, right? So in our most basic primitive brain parts, right, threat assessment. Is that a threat or not? And the more it does not look like you, the more our brain is wired to think that is a potential threat. The great irony of today's culture is that for me personally, I feel most threatened by potential threat by people who look just fucking like me. It is older white dudes who drive. I don't drive a big pickup truck. But as far as like who I think is a potential threat to me, it's those right-wing gun nuts. And they're white men. They look just like me. I could put on a pair of camo pants and I can walk around, put on a Patriots cap, whatever, and walk around some MAGA
Well, let me ask you this then.
pep rally,
Is
and
it
I
all?
look just like them.
Is it all?
Well, not all.
Can't
Of course not all.
Because I drive a truck.
Yeah.
I'm currently sitting here wearing
Yeah, but you got nice
cargos.
tweed on. But
I
you got camo cargo shorts on.
I do. And I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
I
But
don't.
no, I'm saying like that's the irony. Like that those are the people when I see a great big pickup truck with American flags hanging off it at this point in the game, I assume that person's a racist piece of shit.
That's so racist.
Yeah.
But you have. What I'm going to illustrate here is though
Is it racist or am I forming a hypothesis?
you're doing the gross part without the race difference.
Yeah.
So what I'm wearing, and if you were to look at me and I were to describe to you on paper who I am, how I am, and all of that stuff,
Mhm.
like so many people who presume I'm Republican until I start talking, and then
Yeah.
they're like, "Are you a communist?"
No.
Hate communism. It's never worked. It never will, because bad people exist. There are people who are deceptive. There are people who are lazy. And as long as you have that and you try and wrap it all together, you're going to find people who will competitively try and game the system so that they can be lazy.
that's
How
just
do I
it.
know that's a fact? I grew up a computer programmer. And if there's anything computer programmers are, it's lazy. And they all know that.
Yeah.
They're not even
But the
upset at
thing
me
is, like,
saying
here's
that
the
right now
thing
because they know
about
it's true.
Any kind of political economic structure, the more people you have, the bigger the structure, the more likelihood you have of someone abusing the structure for their own personal gain. So capitalism on paper, communism on paper, whatever. We can find scenarios where these are viable systems. But again, the bigger the system, the more likelihood of corruption. And it's going to happen.
Which is why 50 states, all broken up, operating independently with one mission in mind, worked so brilliantly. We're the fastest ones to rise to world dominance, and we're the reason that so many groundbreaking innovations
That wasn't
happened
it.
in such a
wasn't it.
short period of time.
No,
It is because
it
of
was
that.
the central banking system.
They are the hindrance. They are the tax
They
on
allowed
something
capital
good.
to occur to invest to create that
They're
power.
a plague.
Mhm.
The Federal Reserve
Well, we agree
Bank,
on that.
they are a plague and they are a leech. And the sooner everybody recognizes that they're a leech on the prosperity of all generations of Americans, as Woodrow Wilson acknowledged on his way out of office, I've doomed the future prosperity of all Americans to come.
Of the world.
He was
It's
focused
the
on
global
Americans.
banking system. And here's the thing. That in certain ways, I too will say that I'm a small L libertarian. In some ways, I like to say I'm a pro-labor, small L libertarian.
I'm pro anyone who's willing to
All right.
work and help.
But what we're talking about here is the economic system that literally runs the world.
Before
and
we get into that,
we can't change it.
before we get into, and we can,
No, we can't.
before we get into that, I want to finish what I was saying before.
Okay.
Which is, if you were to write me down on paper, okay, fiercely independent,
Yeah.
way outside the box thinker as much as possible,
Mhm.
literally wearing cargos that weren't purchased at Banana Republic, but at a military surplus store, broken in to the point where they're now becoming holy. And if you know anything about military, like actual military gear,
You earned that.
I earned every bit of softness that these cargos now have.
Yeah.
I'm very good with a gun, and I don't own a gun, but I grew up with guns. And I always say when someone says, "So you're not against guns, why don't you have guns?" I typically say, if I need a gun, I'll take it. And if I take your gun from you, count on me killing you. You're trying to kill me is the only reason I'm going after a gun. I'm very good with them. I look the part because I drive a truck filled with tools in the back, because I do blue collar stuff.
Mhm.
But as soon as you start talking to me, you realize I'm not the guy that you should be
Yeah.
afraid of. I wager that there are more people like me.
Do you have big American flags hanging off your truck?
No, but I do own a New Hampshire state flag that was hung over the Capitol. I'm a weird one in that way.
Yeah.
I don't hang the American flag because I didn't go and so to say earn it. I think the allegiance to a federal Really, if you didn't go there, if you didn't earn the stripes, stop it. It's a Comic-Con. You're role playing.
Yeah.
But you'll see a lot of people wearing the American flag that's just black and white.
Yeah.
Nothing to me is more disgraceful.
Yeah.
And in the span of 20 years, we saw these colors don't run. It's the red, white, and blue.
Yeah.
And now everybody's acting all badass and hard wearing the grayscale one. The reason that's even a thing is because when you're in a combat situation and you want to be basically invisible, you can't have red, white, and blue on your body. So they have a grayed out one. So that's going to be your SEAL teams. That's going to be your people that move into a very dangerous area, people who are doing night missions, stuff like that. It's special forces stuff.
Yeah.
And everybody else is role playing when
Yeah.
they put on.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that to exist outside of a combat
Yeah.
arena. And if you didn't go to that combat arena, and your hat, your pack, your
Yeah.
whatever it is that you had that has this, there's no need for that.
Yeah.
You're no different than a person who's dressing up like Pikachu and going to San Diego and walking around and like, I laugh
is.
at those people
Yeah.
when I'm not furious at them.
Yeah.
And I don't see it on anybody on the left. I see it only on people on the right and people that are in the fringe libertarian area. But make no mistake, they're trying to say I'm a badass.
Oh yeah.
And it's hilarious because they look like a child wearing a costume to everybody who's not
Yeah.
them. Put the red, white, and blue on if you believe in freedom. If you believe in the first most important amendment that's ever been put out there. And I'm going to sound like a statist when I say that, a federalist. But basically, I think the coolest thing that the United States did was show that you can have 50 different places to live. If you don't like what is going on here, you can find people that are a little bit more in line with you, and you can move there. If you really hate being around people that are like Texans, move out of Texas. Like, it's not a big deal. You don't have to hate people from Texas. They live the way that they live, and that should be fine. Move
Yeah.
to Illinois or move to Massachusetts. Move to Maine, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Like,
We
you
do
can
have to,
move around,
however,
and you don't have to worry about it.
It's a lot easier today
It is.
to
We're
to
wildly
make that
fortunate.
statement because I mean we have Google Maps and stuff like that. We have the internet, and I can research and find an apartment. I can find a job and stuff like that very, very easily on the other side of the country.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world if I really wanted to.
Really.
You know. But it wasn't too long ago where the notion of just packing up and leaving, going someplace else would be a very daunting thing to do. It's a big risk,
It is.
huge risk.
We were raised by badasses because when your ancestors, my ancestors, when these people fled or left
Yeah.
and went to look for a better world, there was no Google Maps.
Yeah.
Some of them, there was no real credible map system.
I just watched. I wish I had tagged it, saved it. But it was a short video where they had a half dozen or so different individuals. These were all men who were probably in their late 50s and older, and they were from Pakistan. And they put a globe, not a map, but a globe. It was a small one,
Yeah.
a brightly colored one, a globe in front of them. And these individuals had never in their life before seen a physical representation of our planet. Blew their minds.
Just wait till they hear about the flat Earth.
Yeah, and to show them where Pakistan is and where India is and where the United States is and stuff like that. It was the craziest thing to witness. Me, someone like I've always been obsessed with maps my whole life, right?
Yeah.
And the solar system and everything in the universe, just our physical reality. And to watch people older than me, never having even seen a globe, it blew my mind.
There's no doubt that what we are and what we have right now is greater than any other point in human history
Oh yeah.
that we know of. I say that little context. I say that with the background of somebody who does not believe automatically anything that is taught to him for a similar reason to what you said when we started, which is when something is taught to you by someone and then you find out that the thing that they taught they believe in wholeheartedly, but they don't want you to question it, but you know that it's wrong, it becomes really hard to listen to anything that that person says anymore because they've lost that authority. They lost the authenticity of somebody who is not only well-meaning but well-educated in the changing landscape of not just education but intellectualism. Like if you're still somebody professing to be an intellectual and you know nothing of psychedelics, I start to say, okay, so you know everything on this one plane. You know as much as you can understand contextually about the physical world here. But if you don't realize there are multiple other realms to get to that other people similarly arrive at and describe in kind, you have to wonder why you're not questioning more about this reality that you profess such great wisdom in. If you actually had wisdom and you realized there was something that could potentially open your mind to something much, much greater, you would seek it out.
Yeah.
If you speak against it, you're the opposite of an intellectual. You're somebody who's afraid to find out that there's a lot that you don't already know.
Yeah.
And you might have to do the work. So again, lazy people ruin the entire experience because they're stuck. It's damning and dangerous in every single regard. When somebody like Steve Jobs says the idea for all of Apple and all of the products and how all of business should work and how to reimagine, all of it came from DMT. All of it came from acid. When he said that, the number of business leaders that went, excuse me, come again? I'm gonna have to get myself some acid. And then went and did the same thing. The fact that legislators are legislating saying nobody can do that but haven't done it, that's tyranny. That's a small tyranny. That's a bunch of people who don't want things to change because they don't want to engage. They don't know anything about it, but they don't want to hear anything about it because they have control. We should immediately reject them.
There was, getting back to the pub, this is a storytelling coming full circle and things. One of the hardest things that I had to deal with was now being an establishment in the state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire's a control state. The state controls directly the sale of hard liquor. You have to go to a state liquor store in order to purchase it.
They get their sniff.
Wine is a weird gray area. Beer is a separate entity. It's the best system going for the consumer because it's a monopoly and they can offer the lowest price, and the state gets the highest margin when it comes to adding money to the budget. It works in certain ways. But the hard part for me was this one era where the lead enforcement officer was a man named Eddie Edwards.
I remember him.
This is a man who went, after high school, went into the military, worked in military police, did a stint in the military, then came out as a civilian, went to the police academy, became a cop, then went to the liquor commission. Now, there's nothing wrong with that at face value. That's millions of different Americans. That's their life path. Great. This man proudly would tell us that he had never consumed alcohol in his life. He was the epitome of a teetotaler. He never worked in the restaurant business. He never consumed alcohol. Yet he thought he had the moral authority to tell me how to do my job. And having to deal with the restaurant industry during that era sucked. It was awful because he's the guy with the badge.
Yeah.
He's the one who could do whatever he fucking wanted.
I had my own run-in with him.
He was the worst.
I was working the door at the Gaslight during college. And when I was at the Gaslight, he would periodically stop in and just harass customers.
Yep.
And there was one night where, and I got really good at IDing, and I'm a people watcher. You know this of me well. So I study endlessly. So I knew most of the people that were coming through, and I could develop a character in my head pretty accurately and pretty quickly of people.
Yeah.
Doing that, coupling that with knowing how to spot fake IDs and people who are lying. I was trained to be a lie detector in college by the ex-regional director of the FBI. I have a background in psychology, like that I would pour through textbooks that I didn't need to. I would just buy them because UC Boulder was teaching, and this brilliant doctor came out with a new textbook, and I'd have to read neurolinguistic programming volume, like, love it. Every single time we saw him coming, we knew he was going to harass customers, and he was going to find the youngest looking people in there, and he was going to walk past me, and he was a short guy. He was eyeballing me the whole way through, trying to make me feel uncomfortable, trying to intimidate. And growing up in sports and being as tall and big as I am, I'm familiar with people trying to intimidate me also. It's constant. It's never ending. So when he would walk through, I would let him know, hey, you have a problem with anybody's ID in here, by all means, come back to me. It was either me or, and I pointed out the other person that was IDing that night. And he would walk past with that most arrogant, obnoxious twit of a vibe and just kind of stare at me like, yeah, okay, buddy, you mean nothing. Okay. So he walked through. And he started talking to this table one night of 3 young women who were coming in for, one of them had turned 21 and the other 2 were 22 or thereabouts. They were young. But what I didn't sense on them was any propensity. I didn't sense any I'm nervous or let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
It was very, I'm so happy that I get to be a part of this now.
Yeah.
Which is a 21-year-old who's not lying to you.
Yeah.
They're simply excited that this is now their moment. They get to sit and just legally enjoy.
Yeah.
He went right to them, and he's badgering them, and he's badgering them, and he's badgering them, and he's looking at the ID, and he's turning it, and he's flipping it around. And I walked over and I said, how's it look, bud? And he looked up at me and he pulled out his badge, and I jumped back and I said, oh, hold on, partner. There's no reason to get violent in here, okay? And he turned his attention from them directly to me, which is what I wanted. And I started walking backwards, allowing him to like point at me and badger me. But what I did was I pulled him away from
the customers.
them. And then by that time, the gentleman that owned the Gaslight had realized what was happening, and he came downstairs and he came over and he said, what's happening? And I said, this gentleman's questioning the ethics and the capabilities of your employees, and he's harassing those 3 customers. And he said, did you find anything wrong? And he said, I have to tell you no. He said, you do have to tell me no, and you have to leave now. That's it. That's the end of the story. You have to leave now. But basically, those 3 were simply trying to enjoy life. And when somebody moves in, pulling ego behind them and all kinds of baggage, you drop it on someone's head who doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
You ruin everything for everyone. That's someone who's carrying around ideas that should have been discarded. And that's the biggest thing that I pull out of somebody who brags about not doing something and lords over somebody and pretends I'm above you because you simply don't understand what you don't know. If you don't know what you don't know and you know that, you can't ever be positive.
Yeah.
If you can't be positive, it means anything is possible. And if anything is possible, everything is indefinite.
Well put, sir. Well put.
You have to have an open mind. As soon as you think you know everything, you're ruined.
Yeah, exactly. It's for me, getting back to, one of the first, things I shared earlier. It's, you have to be able to set aside your own ego and say, when you're in an exchange of ideas, when you're in dialogue, you can't be the defender of fact. You have to be I am me, and this is what I've learned thus far.
It's what I have. Yeah.
Who are you, and what do you know? And can we find places where we agree? Can we find places where I can learn from you? Can we find places where you can learn from me?
Yeah.
And and I'm just as guilty as anybody of taking on that role of the defender of fact. But I'm pretty good at catching myself. But that's the mindset that so many people have when it comes to going into uh, any sort of discourse, especially when there's opposing viewpoint. And I have found that when the dialogue has reached a point where you are becoming the defender of fact and you're still getting pushback, it's really hard to stop arguing about the fact itself that you're debating and try to come to an understanding of the opposition and ask, why are you resisting?
Yeah.
You know, why? And it's so often in so many conflicts, people react with what happened and what should be done about it. When they should be saying, this is what happened. Why did that happen? I try to have a more proactive approach to things. Like when we recognize that something is a problem within society, rather than before you can say this is how we fix it, you have to understand why it occurs in the first place, cause and effect.
Yeah.
So it's ignorant to simply like just lock them up, blah blah blah. Well, there's a lot cheaper ways of doing that, like lower your taxes and be more humane about it. Fix the problem before it occurs.
Yeah. Like figure out ways to pay firefighters so you don't have to lock up potheads
Yeah.
so that you can use them for firefighters because they're docile and nonviolent.
Yeah. You know,
Look that up.
so there are so many things that just there's a certain irony with certain issues in society, and cannabis being one of them. And you'd think those that have an agenda, that have plans on how to distract the population, would be more for the legalization of mind-altering substances, just to keep everyone stoned and docile. They prefer to err on the police state, but it's just funny how much the right will push back on legalization of things.
I would agree with that to the extent that you can make a rational argument for it. But since 2008, there have been only 4 years where a Republican sat at the presidency. Since 2008, Democrats have had the opportunity to lead and reverse course on marijuana.
Oh yeah, like
And
I
it
said,
hasn't happened.
it's perpetuating the police state.
So what I think we've watched is the complete flip of two political parties, which has happened before, and I think we're
yeah.
watching it happen again. The biggest money that's supporting the Democrats and the left right now, and I don't mean all liberals. I'm not including like the easiest thing to point at right now is like a Bill Maher, classical liberal, a Brett Weinstein, classical liberal, Joe Rogan, classical liberal. These people are not Republicans. But by whose metric? The metric of the current Democratic Party. If you were to look at what the leadership considers, they're all Republican because they aren't lockstep. Now, who's funding? Because the funding of these people is predominantly the wealthiest tech individuals on the planet. They're funded by basically the Republicans' oil people. The Republicans did have, until Clinton, a monopoly on the wealthiest people. So they kind of ruled that way.
Yeah.
Democrats, since Clinton,
Oh, yeah.
have been courting the wealthiest people.
Oh, absolutely.
Aside
Well,
from
Hillary Clinton was
the
a
banks.
uh, a Goldwater girl. She
She was.
campaigned for Barry Goldwater. Hillary Clinton was on the board of directors for Walmart.
Yes. And was chief of legal staff for Walmart.
Yeah, the Democratic Party on a national level has shifted to be pro-banker and pro-big business. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that.
Who's following Trump?
So
People from coal country, people from iron, steel country. The majority of the people that follow Donald Trump are the people who should be following Democrats. It's the working class. It's the blue
Yeah.
collar.
we are seeing a shift in that, though. Back
It's
towards the
upside down land.
but back towards rather towards the Democratic Party anyway. But getting back to legalization of cannabis.
We still haven't seen it under Biden, and more than half the states have legalized.
We've seen medical marijuana taken off Schedule 1 and put to Schedule 3. So it is now viewed as a medicine.
Yeah. Not because of him.
It was during his administration.
During his administration, but it was lower in the, not lower, it was in the other branches of government.
But it's happened. During his administration, it has happened.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that the federal government, for some time, has been willing to be working towards. But it's a big thing because at a federal level, the police state is huge. And the for-profit prison system, which is basically, just slave labor factories. That's all it is.
Basically,
The 13th Amendment needs to be amended.
yeah. That
We
was
need to remove the except for punishment of a crime clause from the 13th Amendment. A significant number of inmates in the prison system are there for nonviolent drug offenses.
Yeah.
So
which is absurd. It's
It's
costing
wrong.
us a lot of money.
it's tyrannical.
And it's an
That's what it
example
is.
of one of two things that the Koch brothers are most famous for, and their bastardization of the libertarian side and the libertarian argument.
Yeah.
The two biggest things that they pushed that I was not really a fan of, part of the reason I will never call myself a large L libertarian,
Yeah.
the Kochs and their bastardization of the non-aggression principle and the freedom of commerce
Yeah.
tried to make the argument that, well, if the private industry can do it better, save your taxpayers the money and let us handle it. So they wanted for private prisons because they make private prisons. Their companies make private prisons.
Yeah.
Some of their other companies need lots of people who aren't wrapped up in believing that they're worth something. And what they need is a lot of people who can't command high wage. So they always pushed for an open border. Now, if you're a land of laws and you are a melting pot that wants people to come on and believe in these ideals and freedom and self-determination and all of that good stuff that goes along with it, and at the same time you simultaneously recognize that terrorism is a thing and that there are people who try to subvert systems and they try to destroy and cause chaos and work for themselves, you have to acknowledge that when people come in, you got to stop them and say, hey, hi, who are you? Where are you from? We're doing a thing here, Take coat of arms. You standing at the door of the coat of arms.
Yeah.
I've watched you turn people away just by looking at them and listening to them walk up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that you're an evil, mean-spirited person, but I do know that you know what you're looking at when you're looking at it, and you know what you're hearing when you hear it.
Yeah.
Because you hear it over and over again. Maybe not the same words, maybe not the same people saying.
Yeah. But you can get a vibe from people. It's like
You can.
we're all different. We're all the same.
And hey, no hate. I'm just doing my thing, trying
Yeah.
to protect these ideals and these people and these freedoms that you're here to enjoy. And if you are here to enjoy them and learn the way that we're doing things,
Yeah.
and don't leave everything that you are behind. Bring it with,
Yeah.
but make sure that it fits in with these several things. One of them is don't go attacking people.
Yeah.
Don't steal things from people. Don't murder
Yeah.
people. I think the greatest thing we're going to learn from the libertarians is non-aggression principle.
Yeah.
If I didn't hurt you and you didn't hurt me, there's no problem. Let's
There's no
leave each
problem.
other alone.
Yeah.
We'll get along. If we agree to do that and someone starts hurting you, count on me going, you need a hand?
Yeah.
If you say yes, I'm your worst nightmare over
Mhm.
here. I'm going
Yep.
to go directly at you,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to make sure that we stop.
Yep.
As soon as you stop hurting you,
Mm-hmm.
we got no problem.
Yep.
It's over, squashed. Let's all get along now.
Mm-hmm. I want to circle back to a thing that the uh, people like the Koch brothers and those who espouse the virtues of small government and privatization, that uh, private business does not necessarily do it better than public, particularly when it is a service, because there should be no profit motive. Healthcare, education, and imprisonment, the penal system. Unfortunately, the private prison system does not do it better than the state. Uh, it is more expensive, and it infringes upon the rights of more Americans because they are financially incentivized to keep the building full. And we have situations where an inmate has a minor altercation with someone in the mess hall, and in a public, in a state system facility, nothing would happen. They get sent to isolation for 24 hours and back in the population.
That's not nothing, though.
But in the privatized one, they say, oh, that outburst is going to cost you another 3 months to your sentence. You've got 12 years
Yeah.
and now 3 months. And these small, incremental time punishments that they use all the time to make sure that those beds are full. And those facilities are in no way, shape, or form meant to ask, why are you here? They're not meant at all to rehabilitate the person and make sure they don't come back. They don't want you to leave because they get paid by the state for every person in a bed. So the whole
So the
thing
way
that
that it's
privatized can do it better, no, they cannot. They don't want to do it better. It may be a bigger, cleaner facility, but they
It's
are going
tough.
to bill the state as much as possible. They cannot do it better than the state because they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to return a profit.
That's it.
That's it.
It's not that the state does it better implicitly. It's not that privacy or private market can't do it better. It's when there's a shareholder that's involved, when it's a public, not meaning government, not
Yeah.
meaning us together as a
Yeah.
society, when it's traded
Yeah.
and there are shareholders, there are certain laws
Yeah.
that need to go away. The one that says that a CEO can't say anything that could potentially be considered to have lost shareholders' value without going to prison. A CEO could literally go to prison for saying, hey guys, these things we were calling vaccines, they're not really vaccines and they're causing health issues. If the CEO says that, it's going to lose the company money, it's going to lose the shareholders' money, and therefore that CEO is going to go to prison. So they're hand shackled and they're only allowed to lie to everybody so that they make more money.
Mm-hmm.
That should be criminal. The boards who have implemented that,
Mm-hmm.
the politicians who have put that in play
Yeah.
should be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
If they have retired since, let's call it a mistake that slipped by, but let's fix it.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, yeah, you end up with the private prison complex just making sure that people stay in prison.
Yeah.
And as long as you have willing prosecutors and DAs that are playing along with those private prisons to make sure that there's a whole bunch of people going to prison for non-violent drug charges so that they have people that are nice and docile, you'd better hope those people don't become president because that's the type of people they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you be better off with a used car salesman or that DA who's corrupt? I say rage against the machine. It's unfortunate, but it may
Okay.
come down to that.
I'm going to say this.
Also, I'm not voting for either of them.
Okay. Unfortunately, there has been one particular issue in our society that has been fought over my entire life.
One?
There's one in particular,
Okay.
okay, that I'm going to focus on. And it is connected to the other issue that I'm going to bring up. I have a litmus test of 2 issues, right? So, for me as a kid, early teen, I grew up in the era of Jimmy Swaggart and Oral Roberts,
Sure.
and the first of the big TV evangelists.
Moral oral.
God damn it. And the Republican Party embraced the religious right.
The worst mistake they ever made.
And what we're looking at here is, first, the separation of church and state, and 2, body autonomy. And for me personally, the right to control one's own body is the foundational liberty.
Yeah.
If we can't agree upon that foundational liberty, then everything else doesn't matter.
It doesn't make any sense because it's the ultimate don't tread on me.
Yeah.
Don't tell me. You
Exactly.
follow don't tread on me. If you think the state should be able to determine what happens to a person's body, you're right out the door.
Exactly, right? So, with the Republican Party using their faith to justify violating a woman's fundamental, foundational liberty to control her own body, particularly in the situation, her reproductive health, because of that, I must always oppose them. And I think one of the reasons why so many of Trump's followers couldn't accept the results or were willing to buy into the lie that Trump lost was that they saw how performative Trump supporters were. They saw big flags and caravans of vehicles driving with flags, and it was very
I
performative.
just saw one yesterday.
The visual support you saw in their communities was huge, and they didn't see it for Biden. And what they can't understand is many Americans, myself included, pretty much our entire lives, we've never actually voted for someone. We've voted against someone.
Sick. Sick and unfortunate.
And generally speaking, that's what most of my life has been. It's just this is just a lesser evil.
It is a tool,
Okay?
and it's a tool they use every
So
single election.
when it comes to voting, if there's a Republican on the ballot for whatever position it is, I view that person as a threat because their party is aligned with the religious right and they're willing to take away people's body autonomy.
Yeah.
If there's a Democrat on the ticket, I know that those people, I assume that those people will defend those things, and I am forced by default to vote Democrat. So
Which
I
is
participate
unfortunate.
every time.
Which is unfortunate.
It is, but
because you
I
do the
participate-
easily calculatable thing that they're knowing that you're going to do.
Exactly. And they don't do anything meaningful about wages or cost of living adjustments or the for-profit prison system or any other social issues that could go on and on for hours about.
But they got what
But
they
they've
needed
got
out
me
of
by
you.
there. And so unfortunately, they never did anything because they needed to keep that issue alive to keep me showing up
And that's the difficult thing about where we are right now is
because the Republicans won
so many people.
and they got it overturned.
Okay, well, so multiple things, but I'm going to follow you on that one. And I need for a thought experiment to
Sure.
exist. I don't know how to explain it as well as I've heard it explained multiple times, so I invite you and anyone interested to look into this. But the argument was made that you can't make marijuana legal. I'm falling into my old
Okay.
speech patterns. I'm trying to run away from calling it marijuana. It's cannabis.
Cannabis.
Marijuana is a derogatory term towards Latin Americans.
Yes.
So, cannabis can't be legalized as long as Roe v. Wade is in place, because Roe v. Wade was a precedent setter. And it was the first time that the federal government was ceded the ability to control what you do with your own body. And in order to make cannabis legal, they would need to get rid of that precedent. Otherwise, the government always has precedent to intervene and tell you that's not good for your body and that's not good for the rest of the state, so we're not going to allow you to do it. if you look into it, you might find out why. And the reason that no politician ever went near it is because they would be labeled, or they would be assigned a side in that abortion debate, which it really has nothing to do with. Now, personally, I say legalize abortion up till 18 years old. I'm a little extreme, I know. But if abortion were made legal up till 18 years old, you put a little pressure on the kids. And if you make it to 18, you know this is a rock solid human being. Otherwise, we pull the ripcord and try again. So kids will be paying attention in school. Kids will be listening to their parents and their elders. Now, if you want to beat me back and make me move that deadline back, okay, I'll go with you on that one. Let's say when a body gets a soul, 18 months. Up until 18 months old,
No,
you can...
You can't.
Sure, you're not going to remember
You
8
can't
months
say-
old.
You can't. You're being silly.
No, come
You're being
on.
silly. You're being silly. No. Okay. Let's touch upon what you're saying as far as like legislative and legal hurdles and precedents, stuff like that. I think this is one of those things where, like, when you've got a connect the dots picture, yeah, those two dots are on the picture, but they don't directly connect. That is a stretch, because the drug war itself is nothing more than
A tool to create a
way.
black market.
What's that?
A tool to create a black market.
One, create a black market, increase profit motive. But generally speaking, it's all just about population numbers control. All right, when it comes to immigration.
Heavily about racism.
Yeah, all of it's founded in racism, right? So when it came to opium and things like that on the West Coast, it was an easy way to deport a whole bunch of Chinese people. When it came to
Cannabis, it was about busting up jazz clubs and...
as a way of suppressing the civil rights movement. They didn't give a fuck about jazz, but they could buzz.
all the jazz musicians were black.
Yeah,
And they were all
those things
smoking
like that was the justification.
marijuana cigarettes.
Yeah.
That was how they could
So
get
in
into
that
those
era,
clubs.
it was the civil rights movement and the anti-Vietnam War movement. So you could pretty much rely upon that there was going to be pot
That was LSD.
at the jazz club, one of many different drugs. And on the dorm rooms, there's going to be pot. So you want to stop that, protest against the Vietnam War, just go bust the college kids for having pot.
And inadvertently make enemies of all of the best and brightest young go-getting minds out there.
Yep.
You just piss off a bunch of college students.
Yep. So when it comes to cannabis, one, it was the drug war is nothing more than a thinly disguised racist policy to control the population, be it for labor means, like when it comes to cannabis and Central American, Mexicans, Venezuelans, El Salvadorans coming to this country to work the menial labor jobs. It was just easy, like, okay, so like the harvest is done. Now we've got all these people around and there's no work for them, so I'll just bust them for having pot and send them back
Port them.
over.
Yeah.
They'll be back in the spring. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But it became just the legal mechanism to just uproot these people who have labored
Right.
and are residing here to throw them on the other side of the line that we made up.
Yeah. And it's not even just that.
Yeah.
I grew up working on an apple orchard, and that
Yeah.
apple orchard every single fall
Yeah.
would hire between 16 and 20 Jamaicans
Yep.
to come up. And the Jamaicans would work for a 12-pack of Bush beer,
Yeah.
specifically. They loved Bush. I don't know why. But he would pay each of them $20 a week. And $20 a week was a lot of money to them.
Yeah.
He gave them a place to live.
Yep.
He gave them food. They were tiny little
Yeah.
shacks
Yeah.
with, bunks and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But they had a place to live. It
Yeah.
wasn't fancy.
It was modern indentured servitude.
They were able to send money that meant something back down to Jamaica. They
Yeah.
would work hard and they would go back down thrilled because they were able to work.
Yeah.
Here, what you have is a great display of why corporations moved over to Southeast Asia and have been taking advantage of those incentives. But you're able to control the people that you're bringing here by always having an escape hatch.
Yeah.
You always have a way to get rid of them because
Yeah.
you know what they're going to be doing. They're Jamaicans. It's a
Yeah.
part of their religion. The Rust
Yeah.
part, they are going to be smoking pot.
Yeah.
So if you're hosting them, you need to make sure they have some.
Yeah.
You're not going to go out and buy it
Yeah.
here. So all of these things were set up to make sure that they were able to do this business.
Mm-hmm.
Is that good business or bad business? Another thought exercise.
Trick question. Because it is business. Are we looking at business from a moral perspective or an amoral perspective? If we're looking from an amoral perspective, well, then it's just business.
Small
and that's
family
how
farm,
we do it, right?
Not corporate.
Morally speaking, if you are bringing these people up with the intention of using the legal system to forcefully send them home, then that is bad business.
Bad business because you're tying up the legal system and you're wasting our tax dollars.
Or just like you are under false pretenses. If you say, come up here and work for me and I will provide for you, if you didn't say there's a cutoff date, you work the season and on this date you must return home, like your work visa has expired.
Yeah.
All right. If that has been said, if all the terms are clearly laid out, well, then it's good business. You've done it, right? But also, like, let's look at the local population. What's the unemployment numbers like in the local area? Are you somehow actually saving money by having these people brought up and you're housing them rather than just hiring a bunch of high school kids over the summer?
Theoretics, sure.
Right.
I'm looking at it from the case point because I was in the middle of it.
So
this one in particular.
So what is the question? Whether he was employing Jamaicans and paying them very little?
Yeah. Is that bad ethics or indifferent or?
I would say it's bad ethics because even at that point, I mean, there's been a federal minimum wage. So regardless whether someone is here legally, illegally,
what if they're super happy with it?
doesn't matter because the minimum wage law is put in place as part of the economic system for the population.
So you use that as a barrier to entry.
Not a barrier to entry.
What you do is you say, in that argument though, and this
If
is,
you're going to bring Jamaicans up, then you pay them the minimum, at least the minimum wage.
then they don't come.
Then you hire the outside. Then you hire the local population.
If you don't have the money to do it, you don't.
Then you go out of business.
So put the family farm out of business.
If you can't afford to pay labor the minimum requirement, then you have a bad business model.
Farming
That's not
isn't-
my problem.
Farming isn't a good business model, but it is essential.
It is, but we're talking about one small farm versus supplying food for 350 million people.
It's a
right.
relatively large farm.
Okay, but still, okay. If you cannot afford, it doesn't matter if you got an apple orchard, or if you have an auto mechanic shop, or whatever business you have. If you can't afford to pay your labor a living wage, not just the minimum wage, but a living wage. When you sit down at the kitchen table and start sketching out your business model for what you want to do, and you know you have to hire people, if you can't afford to pay the people you bring into labor for you a living wage, then you have a bad business model.
You're going to close down all the farms the way that you're arguing. You're going to close down all the farms.
But now we have to look at food production.
Mostly done by people who have significantly darker complexions than you and I. And most of them are doing so because they can't get other jobs here because of all kinds of different reasons. However, if you
We're
just
going to look
get
at
rid
a
of them,
shift
if you just
in
get,
how we live.
if you just get rid of them altogether because they can't be paid the federal minimum wage that was agreed upon by a bunch of bureaucrats, you're going to topple the entire food production system in the United States and everyone is going to starve to death.
Okay.
That's just a fact.
Yes.
It's an unfortunate one, but
Yes.
it is. And the problem
Because
is the minimum wage
the hedge
law.
fund managers who own the grocery stores, won't give up their profit
You're not
share.
going to get any argument from me out of that. You're
Okay.
correct. Absolutely.
So, food production, just as we said earlier, penal system,
Yep.
food systems on a large scale or even small scale should not. And here's the difference, okay? We're talking about a family farm,
Mhm.
right? Is that farmer even able to provide a living wage, a quality of life for their own family that is stable and secure and long lasting, right? The bigger we get, the more people want to cut.
Mhm.
All right. So I think that no, we could definitely afford to pay people a living wage when it comes to picking our grapes.
So here's what
But
this one
you
in
just have to
particular-
eliminate all the motherfuckers that wear suits in New York City from profiting off their labor. That's the problem. The
New York
problem,
and wherever else they are.
the problem isn't how much we pay the labor. The problem is how many people profit from the labor itself. That's where the problem is.
No argument there. No, absolutely. The biggest problem that we're facing right now is the greediest assholes on the planet are fighting with each other. And I've been pointing this one out for a long, long time.
But are they fighting,
They are.
or is it all just a circus?
No, they are. The big disruptor was Bitcoin. The big disruptor.
Oh, that was it,
BRICS is
definitely.
a pretty big disruptor also.
Do you know how much Bitcoin was worth when I first learned about it?
I was offered 25 Bitcoin simply because I was the fourth member of the Campaign for Liberty, the Ron Paul movement. Yeah, I was offered 25 just to hold them and do nothing with them. Didn't matter. But I was so early on in the Liberty movement, the people that started it and were bored, they sent me an email and said, just hold these, make a wallet, make a digital thing. And I was like, there's no way. There's no way the Rothschilds are going to allow this to happen. The people that control the banks, the
Yeah.
people that do all of the global digital money handling and all of that stuff. There's no way they let it work. What they're gonna do is they're gonna pump it up. They're gonna let them pour a bunch of money into it, and then they're just gonna rug out from under. I still think that they probably will.
They probably will. When I first learned about Bitcoin, I read about it in the Economist Economist magazine. It was valued at 11 cents.
Yeah, super low. Yeah, and there's no saying that it doesn't work. It's theoretically it doesn't represent the end of the world.
I think cryptocurrency represents all of the worst aspects of Wall Street. It's nothing but pure speculation. There's no
So's
actual
fiat
value.
currency.
What's that?
So's fiat currency. There's no difference there. The difference is this one you can't just hide somewhere. It's all visible.
Well, yeah, that's the difference. It's completely digital, right? Yeah, fiat currency. Like the money that's in my wallet is only worth what you and I agree upon, really.
No, it's worth what.
Well, what they agree upon. Yeah, definitely, right? But it's symbolic.
And you can always print more.
Yeah.
Which is the big
You always
problem.
print more, right? But
And again, let's look at the
but when it comes
16 of 20 years being in, 12 of 16 years being in Democrat control, the size of the deficit, the size of the Fed balance sheet. We're at what, 35 trillion right now? I remember freaking out.
can't quote numbers right now.
I remember freaking out when George W. Bush was in office because it hit 7 trillion.
Yeah.
And I remember the people like me who used to be called liberal were all screaming that with the debt just continuing to pile, even under these obnoxious neocon Republicans who pretend to be fiscal conservatives and then just allow the military industrial complex to suck as much money out of our pockets as they want.
Yeah.
What are we even doing here?
Yeah.
How are we going to keep a solvent currency? You're going to lose everyone's faith if you just continue printing money or moving decimal points or what have you.
Yeah.
And now, with as much as they devalued the value, they devalued our currency to such an extent. Between 2008 and 2024, it went from 7 and change to 34. 12 of 16 years. We're under Democrat control.
Okay.
If they actually cared at all about anybody aside from the wealthiest people on the planet, they wouldn't have allowed that to happen. Now you've got the Robert Reichs who say that's just the sign of a strong economy. The more money there is, the stronger we are. Guy's a moron. He ran economics policy under Clinton.
Mhm.
They were, as far as I'm considered, war criminals because they toppled currencies around the planet to see what it would do. Just experiments. They toppled Chile's entire economic underpinning to see if something that they wanted to try here would work. And it didn't. It
Okay.
didn't. It destroyed an economy and a country. So they didn't do it here. But there are little mechanisms that they still play with while pointing at Republicans and saying they're the big, mean, greedy
Yeah.
people. If you can't look back in your own direction and go, oh boy,
I think
we
that
screwed up, we can't
when-
fix it.
when people say just different wings, you know, the two wings of the same bird,
Yeah.
this is what they're talking about.
Yeah,
Really.
what you get
There-
is Dick Cheney and
when
George Bush backing the Democrat candidate.
Yeah.
They're not even hiding it anymore.
Oh, I know Cheney did, but I don't think Bush did not. Bush did not back Harris, to the best of my knowledge. But anyway, it's the status quo.
Either way,
It's the
if
status
Dick
quo.
Cheney is on your team,
Yeah.
you have to take a real hard, long look in the mirror.
Totally. But also though, it could just be basic math, right? To when it comes like the Goldman Sachs reviews of the economic policies of the two parties has said that, you know, to sum it up, is that with Trump in office, we will see a slight dip in GDP. With the Harris administration, we should see a slight increase in GDP. When it comes to, you know, military foreign policy, a large number of high-ranking generals, also the highest-ranking enlisted officer of the U.S. Marine Corps, has come out and publicly signed a letter saying that they support the Harris administration versus the Trump administration. And that just means like, okay, so when it comes to the global theater, the people that the Harris administration will put in place will play ball and do it the right way to further the American imperialist viewpoint. Trump's will fuck it up in a little way. So
That's a weird, it's a
put-
weird stance though,
No,
because it's not speculative. We do have 4 years of a Trump presidency that we can look at and see that what they're saying will happen didn't happen.
what we saw
And all they can
is,
say is,
but let's just, all we have to do is look at Afghanistan.
we believe it'll happen.
Afghanistan was a clusterfuck. And
Yeah.
that was Trump's, I mean, it was always a clusterfuck.
It was George W.
It
Bush's
was
fault.
clusterfuck
And
first.
then it was Obama's fault.
Yeah.
And then it was Hillary Clinton's fault.
Yeah.
And then it was Trump's fault.
Yeah.
And then it was
Well, it was-
Biden's fault.
It was Obama's and Hillary's at the same time. And yeah, Trump finally pulled the plug on it, but he went about it like the worst way possible. It was just wrong, right? So we're saying on the
God,
global,
I hate having to defend that piece of shit, but again, he didn't have the worst policy. He's
he
the
did.
one.
He did not
To
include.
them, he acted a little bit like Saddam Hussein.
He
Threatened them better than
He
anyone else would.
negotiated the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan, not including the government of Afghanistan. All he did was talk to the Taliban and pulled everybody and set it up a timeline
because he knew
for
who,
U.S. to pull out.
because he knew who was in the government. We put them there. And they were the most worthless human beings that had ever been put in any positions. And they knew that they couldn't
Okay,
rely
all
on
I
them
can
because they were all
say-
now corrupt and useless.
All I can say now is that the people at the top who handle these things, which I don't know
The
shit.
establishment.
The establishment
Yeah, they all want Harris.
said that could have been done better. That was bad.
And then they did the Afghanistan withdrawal.
No, they're saying in hindsight, when we look at Trump and his foreign policy and how he utilized the
You
military,
jumped over something.
he made bad decisions.
You jumped over something.
What did I jump over?
Trump didn't pull us out of Afghanistan. Biden pulled us out of Afghanistan. It was one of the worst catastrophes we've ever
Biden-
seen.
The military under Biden's leadership
Yeah, pulled out of Afghanistan.
adhered to the international agreements that Trump had laid out.
No, they didn't. Factually inaccurate. Look it up.
I did.
I did too. So we're looking at information that conflicts. They didn't follow Trump's plan. And they didn't have to. They could have followed their own.
But then
If we actually had a leader in office, he would have said, this isn't going to work. We're going to do it like this.
the thing is though is that I honestly don't think that anyone had no one had the perfect idea of how to do it. There was going to be points that were bad no matter what. So in some ways I'm glad that we just pulled out and got like fine, just walk away. Just fucking walk away. Certain people who know a lot more about this than me, people who were in the military, people who were in the Pentagon, saying like the process that occurred during the Trump administration was the wrong way to do it.
Was it better under Obama? The way that he ruled was by putting more people there, spending more money, and running out of bombs. I see a pin on your hat that would stand to differ with that strategy.
Well, I've always been against it. I've always been against it.
Whose policy was best? I'm glad you brought up Bernie Sanders.
I don't want to bring up Bernie Sanders. We're not going there.
If there were ever a Benedict Arnold.
Dude, I said I don't want to go there. Tell us the truth, Bernie. Did they threaten your life? Why did we not audit the Pentagon? Why did we not audit the Pentagon?
They offered him a sniff at the presidency, and he took it. He took it.
All right,
He
there,
should've
there.
known
We
they
went
never
there.
would've-
We went there.
He should have known they never would have let him in.
Of course not. He's Jewish.
He's Butters in South Park.
Oh, come on, man. That's rough.
He's the sweet kid who you know they're never going to let have the actual reins in the group, but they're going to make him feel like he's hanging out. He's a part of. He's at the. Look at him at the table. Look, we got our Butters.
No. Anyway. Change the subject. Pick something random.
Pick something random. Why don't you talk to me about tabletop games and story writing? You and I are working on something fun together, and I don't want to get all pitchy and like talking about what we're doing, but we are doing something, so may as well talk about it.
Okay.
It's got nothing to do with politics.
Yeah.
I don't know how we could end up back in the realm of politics, but there's a story called The Ballad of Jack and Nadia.
Yeah.
And I'll give a brief recap of kind of where it came from, and then I'll let you talk
Sure.
about kind of where it's going. Cursed on Earth had a band member who started farming cancer cells and came real close, walking that line to not being here anymore, and fortunately battled his way back, and we still have him. Fucking love you, Justin. He is integral to Cursed, and he represents a significant portion of the Cursed music. We were being asked constantly to play shows, and while it was just Ryan and I, and while the pandemic was raging on, and we weren't out playing a bunch of shows, we said, listen, we aren't really playing shows right now. And I said, if I can think of something, we'll put together a show. And well, Ryan and I will show up, and we'll be 2/3 of Cursed on Earth, and we'll do some stuff. The place that was asking me in particular, there were two, Earth Eagle North and Auspicious Brew were after us. And I told Auspicious, let me have a couple of weeks to think about it. And I said, what would be interesting would be to combine storytelling mediums and bring people out to libraries to say, you know, this is one of the great institutions that allowed the United States to become what it is. Dispersed knowledge banks that are all over the place, controlled and curated by independent thinkers and librarians who are just dedicated to intellectual pursuit and all of that. Bring people back out. So music, storytelling, kind of frame it in a soundtrack coupling kind of way. And I thought to myself, who's a storyteller that I could use? Immediately you came to mind. You have a great composure on stage. You have a great stage presence, tremendous voice, and a real keen sense of storytelling. So what I didn't want to ask you to do was to create a brand new story. So I thought, okay, on short notice, how about I give you a bunch of songs from Cursed and a bunch of songs from one of my other favorite story sort of artists, Guy Caposalatro, the third. He writes really tremendous, vivid, almost story-like songs.
Mm.
And if we give you a bunch of songs, have you read through the lyrics and then decide this story or this story, take a section or a passage of that story and tell it, and we'll play songs, and that'll be that. You were into it. And so as you were reading through, I believe you called me and said, would you mind, I have the most vivid imagery popping out because of these songs, and these characters are all coming to life and a whole world is coming to, can I just write a new story? And I said, I would never have asked you to do that, but that's secretly exactly what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Please write the story and just use these songs as soundtrack. There was a few weeks that went by, and you said, I think I've got something really good here. I said, is it good enough? And you said, it is. I booked the show, and we did story time at Auspicious Brew, filled the place, had a great time, and then went and performed it at a number of libraries. At that point, it continued to grow, and we incorporated a Dungeons and Dragons element to it, whereby the whole world is going to be developed, and that's what we're doing now, is playing through and writing a new story that outlines and incorporates the Ballad of Jack and Nadia, but in a whole world.
Yeah.
We're hoping to release a book. We're hoping to make this playable, so as people are coming to these performances, we'll do a lot of story time performances.
Yep.
People can come and they can collect character sheets.
Yep.
They can come up with their own character and play through on their own with their friends. Talk to me from your standpoint, your visibility,
Okay, so
and then tell us what's wrapping through your mind right now. Where's this creative direction going?
so for me, I was able to look at a bunch of different songs from Cursed on Earth and realize if I created a playlist in a certain order, I could see a narrative thread going through all the songs. And that's what inspired the story, The Ballad of Jack and Nadia. So I wrote that story and we performed it at those shows. And so what we've been doing is I've been taking elements from my notes of the past 40 years. So I've been playing D&D since 1980. The game itself is 50 years old this year. So the 10 years previous to me playing was much more of a tabletop warfare game. The role-playing aspect has become more and more and more a part of that game. So basically, I was able to take the story and set it into a section of the world that I had created. And you guys created characters that were in that world. And the goal for me in this campaign is that the story, The Ballad of Jack and Nadia, talks about Jack being this child of the forest, a young man who is, for all intents and purposes, Fae.
What's Fae? Describe Fae.
So Fae, for those who
what
don't
it
know, of the fairy world, the magical world of the forest and the natural places.
Is there an example?
So if you were to ever see the movie Legend with Tom Cruise, Mia Sarah, and Tim Curry, one of the greatest movies of all time,
Okay.
Jack, right? Jack really is just human in that film, but he's accepted in with the elves and the pixies and the gnomes and stuff like that. So the Feywild is a place where these fantasy creatures live.
Okay.
And they make it pretty clear that stay out if you're not one of them.
Ooh. That sounds a lot like Alabama. Just maybe under a different flag.
Yep. But not necessarily absolutely stay out. But if you enter their world, and you meet one of them,
put a hood on and get to work.
Yeah. But no, it's, you know, they have a mischievous sense of humor, right? So Jack has, unfortunately, he left the Feywild but then returned because of a tragedy. His first true love has died, but she is not dead per se. She is undead.
Hmm.
Her soul, her body, still roams the forest of the Fey realm. And Jack has gone back to the Feywild to try and resolve this, but he does not know how to. So the goal of the campaign will eventually be for the characters to meet Jack and help him resolve this issue so he can move on in life.
Alive.
Hmm?
He's still alive.
He's still alive, but his true love is undead. And this is something that the realm has never seen before. This darkness is something new. So, and that has actually become the subplot of a greater story that I'm telling with you guys. And it is developing into a much bigger campaign.
Oh, fantastic.
The initial story arc could have been done, you know, in one summer. If I had decided to stick strictly to resolving the issue posed in the Ballad of Jack and Nadia, then we would have already wrapped it up. This has become huge.
Now, do you see this becoming kind of like a new world scenario or a play off of an existing?
So I'm hoping that after the campaign is done, I can take the notes I have from the couple different cities that we've developed and the Feywild and stuff like that, and publish it as an adventure setting. Like it will be a place where there is enough civilization so that characters can be established and begin a campaign, and enough of conflict going on in the regions around where there'll be adventures for people. So I'm hoping that it becomes a campaign setting for people so they can just use the 5e rules and then play in my world.
No, the 5e rules are specific to Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah,
and
that's,
kind of
that's
how
the
it all
current,
works.
Yeah, the 5th edition.
Yeah.
The 50th,
Oh,
50th
5e, 5th
yeah.
edition.
The 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons is this year, and the current rule book, which I just picked up, the new player's handbook, is a modified 5th edition rule system. So we'll stick to just the books that we've got. The Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual don't come out till, like, DMG comes out at Christmas and Monster Manual comes out in the spring. So we'll just use the rule systems that we've got right now for this.
Yeah.
And I'll be able to tweak it for the nitty gritty rules details for the 2024 5e edition.
Yeah.
So hopefully, you know, you'll be able to, we'll have a release party at Jumpgate and Diversions and, you know, other hobby shops and be like, hey, check out this fantasy world that you can run a campaign in.
I spoke with a nice lady from Exeter Library,
Nice.
who's they host a D&D night once a week
Yeah.
down there, and she was very excited to hear about what we were up to. I would imagine we'll do
Yeah, we should definitely.
a thing down there with her.
Yeah.
And then she said that she is the head of some, I don't think it's Friends Friends of the Library, which is a nonprofit that provides funding and seeks revenue or seeks sources for ongoing things at the different libraries. But some organization that does something similar and helps to get all of these fun things that people can do at different libraries into other libraries. And I said, well, that's great. We'll just piggyback on the work that you're already doing and go to whichever ones you're saying, but we're going to some that we've already set up. And hopefully we can do a lot of releases at different libraries. And again, pull in more attention to the storytelling element and, you know, the idea behind not just communicating ideas but communicating ways of creating ideas and
Mhm.
passing on. Oh, I just caught myself almost about to say something along the lines of the Bible is good, which
Where did that come from?
didn't sit well. Passing along stories and principles
Yeah.
and, you know,
Yeah.
within a book. You know, this is a good place to learn, you know, good
Yeah.
ways of life and all of that
Exactly.
stuff. Except I think it's a little bit more like,
Yeah. No, I think that would be awesome. Like I have a few friends that work in libraries, and a lot of local libraries host a Dungeons and Dragons night, and I would love to reach a point where my stuff is being used, and I am game mastering a session. On that note,
Nevin's letting me know we're a little over 2 hours, I
yeah,
think.
I'm watching the clock. It's past 9,
Oh,
and I do need to wrap it up.
well, then let's do that. I hope this isn't the only time that I get to,
Oh, no.
to sit and have you on this. I'm bringing on a lot of people that I find wildly interesting, but I'm pretty positive the level of interesting that you represent is beyond one podcast.
For sure.
Yeah,
Anytime you want, I'm here, dude.
groovy. Well, we'll do it again. Mark Michael Adams. Look for him in your bookstores to come. Follow, if you're interested in story time, follow Cursed on Earth, and you'll see when story time is coming out. Do you have any reason people would want to get in touch with you? Do you have social media you want people to find you on, or are you like give a pitch plug?
Well, you can find me on Facebook, Mark Michael Adams. That's really the only social media I use because I am Gen X.
Here.
I'm part of Long Story Short, which is a local storytelling session. We're coming up on our 10th anniversary for that. I often participate in Beat Night, and I'm working with Mike Nelson from B Monk Press to publish some of my older spoken word material. Working with a friend who does hip hop beats. Normally, like with spoken word, I do jazz music behind me. But just for shits and giggles, I'm having DC, the MIDI alien, put some beats
Love it.
to my old work, and we're close to having it ready to be mastered. Andy May is taking on the mastering.
Oh, hell yeah.
Your eyebrows just went up in the most beautiful way.
Andy May
Yeah.
sits high on my list.
Yeah,
of-
you should have Andy on this show.
if I could.
Yeah, he's
I
on tour right
absolutely
now. He'll
will.
be back at the end of the month.
Yeah, he's a hard guy to pin down, but he's again one of the most interesting dudes I
Yep.
know. Love
Um,
that guy.
So I got that going on, but and I'm also looking to do more voiceover work. So if you've got a project in mind where you need someone's voice to do something,
Just listen to the sweet, sultry sounds of Mark Michael Adams.
oh, and check out A Long Walk.
Yes.
It's a science fiction serial where I have a character on that. So please go to your streaming platforms and check that out. And
It's a fantastic podcast. I've listened to
Pretty
all
great.
of it. I'll probably listen to all of it again. It's
Thank you,
great. It's
sir.
a lot of fun.
cheers.
Thank you, Mark.
My pleasure. Thanks, Sean.
See you guys. Love
See
you.
ya.
Here they are. Without these folks, taking Seacoast Entertainer to the next levels wouldn't be happening. Not to this scale. Tangram 3DS actively supports our music and arts scene and has proudly been part of it for the last 20 years. Their creative pros bring vision to life with everything from 3D renderings and VR to video, animation, web design, and branding. As a team of artists living and working on the Seacoast, Tangram considers a thriving local culture essential to us all for the connections we make, communities we build, and creativity we foster. Visit tangram3ds.com to learn more, see their work, and imagine what they can do for you.